Railroads were a vital link to carry out the riches of the Rockies and to help settle the area. Let's go to the end of the 19th century when the rugged mountains were just being opened by rail.
Let's step back in time. The year is 1882, and we're riding the rails on the historic Denver, South Park and Pacific Railroad, a narrow-gauge rail line running west from Denver over some of the toughest terrain in the Colorado Rockies.
The railroad served the mines of Colorado, which was the main industry of the period. It also handled a lot of construction traffic for the railroad, the building of it, because it was under construction at the time, and also people, passengers, men, miners, and ladies. The railroad is narrow gauge, which means it's 3 foot between the rails instead of the 4 foot 8.5 inches of the standard gauge. It's much cheaper to build, you get much sharper curves. It goes through some of the most beautiful parts of the Rocky Mountains. It travels over the Continental Divide 3 times, and it serves a lot of boom towns, a lot of mine interests, which therefore has certain mystique to it.
Inspired by a book he read as a child, historian and author Andrew Dodge built his model railroad with meticulous detail. That inspirational book belonged to his father, a serious rail fan and modeler who helped nurture young Andy's love of railroading.
My layout is a point-to-point layout, and what is actually modeled includes the Platte Canyon, which is southwest of Denver, which is a beautiful canyon area with steep walls. It goes over Kenosha Pass into the South Park, which is a prehistoric caldera for a volcano and has a division point at Como. From Como, the railroad goes on to a staging area for Gunnison and Leadville, and the modeled area goes on to the branch line, which goes over Boreas Pass to Breckenridge, and will eventually go on to Leadville. The railroad in 1882 was under construction, and therefore to show a railroad completed would be inappropriate. The building, the hotel, Pacific Hotel in Como, is under construction as it was photographed in 1883, with only part of the roof of one section of the hotel completed. The engine house at Boreas Pass is under construction, and I left it that way. A railroad is a living unit, and in order to show that, you have to show the vitality of it, whether it's in the building phase, then you have to show things are being built, or if you're in the operating phase, then you're simply operating the railroad. But since I'm in the building phase, I had to portray both aspects of the railroad.
The complex layout allows multiple operators to run different trains at the same time. Each station is equipped with a telegraph key so that the entire operation runs smoothly.
The telegraph allows the operators to signal to another station their desire to move on to their station, or to telegraph back to the previous station they left that they have now cleared that track so another train can be put on that area of the railroad.
All the signals are routed to a central telegraph control station, which enables the central station to regulate traffic flow.
When I receive a signal, I get a light, which tells me exactly what station it is. I don't have to listen to the code. And when he's finished that, I will connect that and then send the acknowledgement signal. And then we proceed through the codes for the rest of it to determine what the train wants to do.
Most of Andy's locomotives and cars are scratch-built. In some cases, he begins with sheets of brass and a few castings and creates the rest. Sometimes the only thing to go by is an old photo. From there, Andy does all the painstaking research and puts together drawings of how he intends to craft the rail car. With all this attention to detail, Andy never loses sight of the big picture, a philosophy of modeling that is both mindful of historic accuracy and respectful of how these railways blend into their surroundings.
My approach is less is more in model railroading, and I wanted the railroad to look like it was part of the scenery. I wanted the scenery to be a co-equal partner with the railroad. And in order to achieve that, you try and reduce the amount of track and let the scenery play a huge role in that. The rolling stock does not need to be a great amount because it is narrow gauge, and typically the trains only hold 3, 4, 5 cars at any one time. And so this also diminishes the size of the railroad in relation to the scenery.
This historian also gives a nod to geological authenticity. Andy has visited each area along the railroad's route and hauled away freezer bags of rocks and ground materials to accurately replicate those sites on his layout. Thanks to historian Andy Dodge's meticulous attention to authenticity of a bygone era and his artist's eye for every detail, Andy Dodge has transported visitors back to the 1880s in the rugged Rocky Mountains of the Denver, South Park, and Pacific Railroad, and we are enriched by the experience.